Here with Paul Stewart of The Feeling, currently on the second night of a 14-date tour in support of your debut record, Paul. It must be great, I'm sure, to be playing to these audiences, the old tracks, but we're here now to talk about your kit. Let's start off with the drum, shall we? Gretsch Broadcaster kit you've been with Gretsch a little while now. Can you take us through, starting with the snare drum?
Yeah, the snare's a 14 by 6.5 wood shell, and yeah, I kind of like generally like a deep fat kind of thing. It's quite heavily damped with a Remo PS3 on the top, which I really like. And then it's a 13 by 9 Racton, 22 by 16 floor. Sorry, 20 by 16 kick, 16 by 16 floor. Yeah, I've had this kit for a couple of years now, and yeah, I absolutely love it. It's perfect for this. It sort of has all the kind of depth and warmth that I want, kind of for that kind of slightly vintagey sound, but it has a modern sort of attack and edge on it, particularly with the clear P4 heads, that Remo heads that I'm using as well on the toms. And yeah, Picton's really punchy. It's just got everything you want, nothing you don't. Which I work closely with John Lewis, our front of house guy, to make sure that he's getting what he wants out front as well. So it's very important that we get that.
We talked a little bit in our chat at Drum Depot about the influences you have on your playing and that classic sound, and it's Gretsch and this kit in particular which delivers that for you and what you want for this band.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, as we were saying earlier, that sort of 60s and 70s kind of sound, particularly the 70s thing. I mean, you know, I think sometimes if you get too sort of dead for live, things can start to sound a bit boxy, especially when you're using in ears as we are. And as I said, this kit has the perfect balance between being, as I said, I use a fair bit of damping, but it still has life and punch to it, without sort of, you know, foregoing that and ending up sounding boxy because you damp it. So yeah, it's just the perfect balance for me.
And the wood snare as well. Any sort of particular reasons behind the choice behind that?
Well, I have a couple of metal shell drums as well. I mean, I always go for kind of deep drums, like 6.5 if I can, and so they're all that. But I mean, to be honest, the first one I tried, when I first tried a broadcaster kit, I thought I was going to use my own, like a different snare, and I wasn't that worried. But a matching wood kind of drum came with the kit that I tried, and I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe the depth I could get from it. I thought I'd only ever experienced that with old sort of vintage metal shell drums, and it had it. So I was like, wow, I need to get one of those then. So it's just giving me exactly what I want, and you know, I'm not particularly keen on the kind of ringy. I mean, I like a ringy snare in the studio sometimes for certain things, but for live, front of house thanks me for it. That I like to kind of tune that out generally, or damp it out. And that drum again, it's got nothing unpleasant.
And for the toms as well, you get that depth, I suppose. You talk about sort of using slightly bigger drums here as well, but you get that depth. So when you're playing those different dynamics with the Feeling as well, you can really hear the shells.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, that's the most important thing. We've got the music goes up and down an awful lot. So dynamically, if I'm starting on a real quiet build, I want to hear the shell of the drum right from the start. You know, I think more dense, thicker shells have a tendency to need to be hit a bit harder to get them to actually move. And I've had that issue before. So with these, you know, they're perfect, and you can hear the character of the drum immediately.
And you talk about the Remo heads. You mentioned to me a little bit earlier as well that you've been with Remo, but you changed the heads you were using sort of recently. The front of house guys love it as well. What you're using on the kit now, and they go particularly well with this drum set.
Yeah. I mean, for me, again, it's I've heard these drums played by other people with no damping whatsoever, with much thinner heads than I use, like an ambassador weight head, and they sound fantastic. But you know, for me, for what I want to hear in the ears and what front of house are happy with as well, it's P4s. They're clear at the moment, but I've used coated in the studio as well. Sometimes use coated live, and it's PS3 on a kick and snare at the moment. I have used the P77 on the snare as well, which has the kind of reinforcement kind of patch in the centre. But yeah, I mean, generally speaking, those heavier weight heads are the ones that I like. But yeah, I think these drums will respond to anything depending on, you can put whatever you want on them. But for this music and for me, I like these.
And we can't leave our discussion about the kit without talking about the finish on it. It's quite something in person. I hope it's been picked up. It's doing it justice on the camera here. Just talk about this finish.
Well, I've got to say, when I first ordered the kit, and Andrew Shub in America, who asked me, he's like, what colour do you want? And I was going to go with kind of a traditional bottle green, kind of normal glitter. And then he said, have you looked at the glass glitter? Because it's a bit of a thicker glitter, it's a bit sort of the pieces are bigger, so it sparkles kind of from further away. And so I liked the sound of that, so I went with that. And then I was looking through the website and I saw this turquoise glass glitter. I was like, wow, I've just never seen a kit in that colour before. And I quite like things being a little bit, unusual, a little bit different. And so I went with it. But when I first saw it, I was like, bloody hell, it just looks beautiful. It really took me back. I'm totally in love with it.
I can tell. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we all are.
Yeah, but yeah, and things like having the natural wood finish on the hoops, and stuff like that. Even the gold earring, it's really handsome kit. So much so that when I got my in-ears made, I got the same colour because they happen to do the same colour as this. So I'm a bit OCD that way. But yeah, love it. Absolutely love it.
Let's move on to the cymbals using Zildjian. The K hats, and then the Croaky range for the ride and the crashes here. Again, I suppose with an aim at that sort of vintage sound which you love so much.
Exactly, yeah. Well, so the hats are 15 K lights, which are probably what I would naturally go for actually is maybe the Karoq, but they have, for me, they didn't have quite enough top end, and for this band, for just stuff that's happening, it's just a bit more, it's useful if I've got a little bit more top end, a bit more definition in the hats, which is why I'm using that. Other than that, the Karoq sort of series is perfect for me. It's got that vintage kind of thing, but also key thing being that they're not too loud. Depending on what kind of stages you're playing, but particularly with this band. So Dan, lead singer, obviously, how far have we got here? Like 8 feet or something like that. That lead vocal mic is only 8 feet from me. He's on wedges, and so his ears are open. So he's hearing cymbal sound straight from the source. And if I was using some brighter cymbals, louder cymbals, it causes him a bit of a nightmare. So basically, by using these, not only am I getting the kind of tone and the warmth that I want, again, which sort of fits with the whole drum set in general, and that kind of vintagey vibe, but it's also not overly loud, which means it's nicer for him on stage, it's easier for front of house with things spilling down vocal mics and all the rest, because obviously the other four guys all sing, so you've got a lot of open vocal mics on the stage.
And again, the sizes here we've got?
It's 18 and 19 crashes, and a 22 ride.
Yeah.
And yeah, the ride I only just got recently, and it's I'm so happy with it. It takes a while to find the right ride cymbal.
Yeah.
That does all the right things you want, so the right amount of definition, the right amount of wash for what you want, right bell sound if you use bell much, and I really love that. I'm really happy with that.
SPDSX as well from Roland here. That's something that you use with this band. What are the advantages of it for you within the setup of Play With the Feeling?
I don't use it for a great deal with this band. I use the internal click a couple of times just to mark tempos and make sure certain things are spot on, because if the guys are using live guitar delays, then tempos need to be set absolutely square for their delay settings to work. So I use it for that sometimes. A couple of songs have a drum loop which I trigger from that because as opposed to running it on an HD, just because then we have the option for the intro save before the first verse starts, for Dan to talk over it, and it can be an undetermined length. So that's kind of helpful. Other than that, I don't really use it for a lot. The odd kind of sub drop and some sort of bells and whistles, but nothing major.
But you do a lot of session gigs on top of this as well. So I suppose the versatility of it there for all those different jobs that come in.
Oh yeah,
is vital.
Absolutely. For that, I use a kick trigger and a second snare with a trigger on that. And so I'd sort of trigger some 80s kind of like Simmons type sounds off for the kick and snare with that. It's really useful for that kind of thing. And then obviously hand claps and all like bits and pieces for other gigs. So yeah, I mean, and it's so versatile. You can throw the sounds in there really easily on a USB stick, which is compared to the old way of doing it, the old D drum stuff from back in the day. It's definitely easy to work with, which is great. And I've got a Porter and Davies kind of
I was going to say,
shaker, like butt kicker over there, which is absolutely awesome.
What do you have coming through that?
Anything low end, so kick drum, floor tom, the samples off the SPDSX, bass guitar, even the low end of the keyboard is kind of like doing something. So and obviously you can select exactly the low contour, so you can decide exactly how much low end and where you want that shelf to be. But yeah, it's one of those things that if ever there's a situation for whatever reason where I have to do a show without that, you miss it terribly.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is a key piece of equipment for you then. No matter the venue, that's kind of, there are advantages for them.
Absolutely, yeah. Like I say, if you've been doing, you know, a tours with it and all the rest of it, and then you do a flyaway show, and for some reason it doesn't come with you, and you have to do the show without. Yeah, you think, what's missing? Something's wrong, and it's like I'm not having my butt shaken by this stool. But yeah, it's good. It's really good.
And I noticed when I popped my head around there as well, Tama Iron Cobra bass drum pedal. You can't go wrong with that.
No, exactly. I got it a long time ago, and I've used those pedals for a number of years, and I've just never felt the need to change them for anything. I think they're great. That's it. It's a pair of Cymatic LP24s up there. I think they're called LP24. The new Cymatic machines. We don't use track-on much. It's literally only really for a couple of sound effects type things, a little bit of shaker and a bit of acoustic guitar. You know, if there was a sixth member, they'd be playing those things, but there isn't. So.
I haven't asked you about your sticks. We're going to cover sticks.
They are Vic Firth 85As, which I remember when they came out, they were kind of an unusual size, and not many people used them, and it was quite difficult to get hold of them at the time, but they became quite popular. I think a tiny bit thinner, tiny bit longer than a 5A, basically. And yeah, my hands aren't that big, so they're perfect for me.
Well, thanks so much for taking the time, both to talk to us at Drum Depot and here with the gear rundown. We appreciate it so much, and good luck with the rest of the tour.
Of course, no worries. Thanks.